The invisible force that is already deciding your life. There is a force shaping your life right now. It is not dramatic. It is not loud. And it does not demand your attention. In fact, most people never notice it at all. Yet it quietly determines where you will be 1 year from now, 5 years from now, and even decades into your future. This force is not luck. It is not talent. And it is not a single life-changing decision. It is something much smaller. Something almost invisible. It is what we call the 1% shift. The 1% shift is the idea that the smallest daily actions, barely noticeable in the moment, are constantly compounding, either building your future or slowly eroding it. Every day, you are either improving by 1% or declining by 1%. There is no neutral. A single decision seems harmless. Skipping one workout doesn't matter. Procrastinating for 1 day feels insignificant. Choosing comfort over effort feels justified. But here is the truth most people never confront. These decisions are not isolated. They stack. They repeat. They compound. And over time, they become your life. The difference between success and failure is not one massive breakthrough. It is the accumulation of thousands of small choices, made consistently, often unconsciously. A 1% improvement each day doesn't feel like progress. A 1% decline doesn't feel like failure. But over time, the gap between the two becomes enormous. One path leads to growth, discipline, clarity, and control. The other leads to stagnation, regret, and a life that feels like it slipped away. And the most dangerous part? You won't notice it happening. Not today. Not tomorrow. Not even next month. But one day, you will look at your life and realize it was built by patterns you never questioned. This audiobook is not about motivation. It is about awareness. It is about exposing the silent system that is already running your life and giving you the power to take control of it. Because once you understand the 1% shift, you cannot unsee it. And once you see it, you can change everything. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe to MindLab Audiobooks, where we break down the hidden systems controlling your behavior, your mindset, and your future, so you can take back control, one shift at a time. Introduction. Why you've been focusing on the wrong changes. Most people believe change happens in big moments. A sudden breakthrough. A surge of motivation. A dramatic decision that transforms everything overnight. This belief is not just common. It is deeply ingrained. You see it everywhere. Starting tomorrow, I'll change my life. This is my turning point. This time, everything will be different. And for a short time, it feels real. You wake up earlier. You feel motivated. You take action. But then something happens. The intensity fades. The discipline weakens. And slowly, almost invisibly, you return to who you were before. Not because you lack potential. Not because you lack intelligence. But because you've been focusing on the wrong kind of change. You've been chasing intensity instead of consistency. You've been chasing outcomes instead of systems. You've been chasing motivation instead of identity. And this is where most people lose the game without even realizing they're playing it. Because real change does not come from what you do once. It comes from what you do repeatedly. Quietly. Daily. Without recognition or immediate reward. This is where the concept of the 1% shift becomes critical. The problem is not that you're not capable of change. The problem is that you've been measuring change incorrectly. You expect visible results too quickly. You expect progress to feel dramatic. You expect effort to immediately pay off. But real progress operates on a delay. At first, nothing seems to happen. You make better choices, but your life looks the same. You build small habits, but you don't feel different. You stay consistent, but there is no visible reward. This is the phase where most people quit. Not because it isn't working, but because it doesn't look like it's working. This is the trap. Because beneath the surface, something is happening. Your habits are shaping your identity. Your identity is shaping your behavior. And your behavior is shaping your future. But the results are hidden. For now. Think of it like planting a seed. For weeks, maybe even months, nothing appears above the ground. No visible growth. No obvious progress. And yet beneath the surface, roots are forming. Strength is building. Foundations are being laid. Then one day, growth becomes visible. And from that point forward, it accelerates. Most people quit before that moment ever arrives. They abandon the process just before it starts working. This is why the 1% shift is not just about action. It is about patience. It is about understanding that small improvements are not meant to feel powerful in the moment. They are meant to become powerful over time. And the same is true in reverse. Negative habits do not destroy your life overnight. They quietly accumulate. One bad decision becomes a pattern. One pattern becomes a lifestyle. One lifestyle becomes your reality. And by the time the consequences are visible, they are often difficult to reverse. This audiobook will challenge the way you think about progress. It will force you to confront the invisible patterns shaping your life. And most importantly, it will give you a new framework. Stop asking, what big change can I make? Start asking, what small action can I repeat daily? Because your future is not decided in moments of intensity. It is decided in moments of repetition. And whether you realize it or not, those moments are happening right now. Chapter 1: The Myth of Big Change. If you had to change your life, where would you start? Most people answer this question the same way. They think bigger. Bigger goals. Bigger actions. Bigger sacrifices. They believe that in order to create a different life, they need to do something drastic. Quit everything. Reinvent themselves overnight. Push harder than ever before. This belief feels logical. If you want massive results, you need massive action. But this logic is flawed. Not because effort doesn't matter, but because sustainability matters more. Big change is exciting. It creates urgency. It creates emotional momentum. It gives you the illusion that everything is about to shift. But it comes with a hidden cost. It is difficult to maintain. And anything you cannot maintain cannot transform your life. This is where the myth begins to collapse. Because the goal is not to change your life for a few days. The goal is to change it permanently. And permanent change does not come from extreme actions. It comes from repeatable actions. Small enough to do daily. Simple enough to sustain. Consistent enough to compound. But most people reject small actions. They feel insignificant. Almost pointless. How can something this small make a difference? So they ignore them. They wait for the moment when they feel ready to go all in. And that moment rarely comes. Or when it does, it fades just as quickly. This creates a cycle. Motivation, intensity, burnout, reset. And every time the cycle repeats, it reinforces a dangerous belief. That they are the problem. But the truth is, the strategy is the problem. You were never meant to rely on intensity. You were meant to build systems. Because systems remove the need for constant motivation. They create structure. They create predictability. And most importantly, they create momentum. A small action repeated daily becomes automatic. What was once difficult becomes effortless. What once required discipline becomes a habit. And what becomes habit becomes identity. This is the shift most people never make. They try to force change from the outside, instead of building it from the inside. They focus on outcomes, instead of focusing on the process that creates those outcomes. And as a result, they stay stuck. Because without a system, progress is temporary. But with a system, progress becomes inevitable. The 1% shift is not about doing more. It is about doing less, but doing it consistently. It is about lowering the barrier to action, so you never stop. Because stopping is the only thing that breaks the compound effect. If you improve by 1% today, it won't feel like much. If you repeat that tomorrow, it still won't feel like much. But over time, that small improvement begins to stack. And eventually, it becomes impossible to ignore. The same is true for negative actions. Small shortcuts. Small delays. Small compromises. Each one feels harmless. But repeated daily, they become destructive. This is why the myth of big change is so dangerous. It distracts you from the only thing that truly matters. Consistency. Not perfection. Not intensity. Not motivation. Consistency. Because consistency is what turns small actions into massive results. Chapter 1 Summary. Big, dramatic changes are not sustainable. They rely on motivation, which is temporary. Lasting change comes from small, repeatable actions that can be maintained daily. Systems, not intensity, are what create real transformation. Practical lessons and exercises. 1. Identify one area of your life where you've been relying on motivation instead of consistency. 2. Reduce your goal to a version so small that it feels almost impossible to fail. 3. Commit to repeating that action daily for the next 7 days. 4. Track consistency, not results. 5. Observe how your resistance decreases as repetition increases. Transition to Chapter 2. You've just seen why big change is a myth. Why intensity fades. And why consistency is the only force that truly reshapes your life. But understanding this raises a deeper question. If small actions are what matter most, then how exactly do they build something significant? How can something so small create something so powerful? To answer that, you need to understand the underlying mechanism behind the 1% shift. Because this isn't just philosophy. It's math. Precise. Predictable. Unavoidable. And once you see it clearly, you'll realize that every decision you make is being calculated and compounded in real time. Now entering Chapter 2, the mathematics of small decisions. Chapter 2, the mathematics of small decisions. Every action you take is part of a calculation. Not a visible one. Not something you consciously track. But a calculation nonetheless. Every habit, every choice, every repeated behavior is being added, multiplied, and compounded over time. And whether you realize it or not, your life right now is the result of that equation. This is where most people misunderstand progress. They think in terms of single events. One workout. One productive day. One missed opportunity. But life does not operate on isolated moments. It operates on accumulation. And accumulation follows mathematical laws. The most important of those laws is simple. Small changes, repeated consistently, produce exponential results. At first, this principle feels abstract. Because in the early stages, nothing seems to happen. You improved by 1% today. Tomorrow, another 1%. The next day, another. But these improvements are so small, they feel meaningless. There is no visible difference. No immediate reward. No dramatic shift. So the mind assumes, this isn't working. But the math tells a different story. If you improve by 1% every day for a year, you don't just become slightly better. You become exponentially better. Not 365% better. But nearly 37 times better than where you started. And if you decline by 1% each day, you don't stay close to where you are. You approach zero. This is the brutal clarity of compounding. It works in both directions. Growth or decay. Progress or decline. And it does not care about your intentions. Only your actions. This is where the danger lies. Because negative decisions rarely feel significant. Skipping one day doesn't matter. Choosing comfort once doesn't matter. Delaying action feels harmless. But the equation is always running. And every small negative action is subtracting from your trajectory. Quietly. Consistently. Until one day, the result becomes visible. And by then, it feels sudden. But it was never sudden. It was calculated. Now here's where it becomes even more important. Compounding is not linear. It is exponential. Which means the results are delayed. For a long time, your efforts appear flat. You put in work, but see no outcome. You stay disciplined, but nothing changes. This phase is called the valley of latent potential, where effort and results do not appear to match. Most people quit here because they believe effort should immediately produce visible change. But the truth is, progress is being stored. Every repetition is adding to the system. Every small action is building momentum. You just can't see it yet. Then something shifts. The curve starts to rise. Results begin to appear. And suddenly, what felt pointless starts to feel powerful. This is the moment people call a breakthrough. But it's not a breakthrough. It's the visible result of invisible work. This is why patience is not optional. It is required. Because without patience, you interrupt the process. You reset the equation. You start over, again and again, never reaching the point where compounding takes over. Now consider the opposite. Negative habits also compound. But they follow the same pattern. At first, nothing seems wrong. No consequences. No visible damage. Everything feels under control. But beneath the surface, decline is accumulating. Energy decreases. Focus weakens. Discipline erodes. And then one day, the effects become visible. And they feel overwhelmed. But again, it was never sudden. It was mathematical. This is why the 1% shift is not about motivation. It is about awareness. You are always in the equation. Every day, you are either adding to your future or subtracting from it. And the most dangerous assumption you can make is this: that small decisions don't matter. Because they are the only things that do. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You follow the trajectory of your repeated actions. And that trajectory is being shaped, right now, with every decision you make. Chapter 2 Summary. Your life operates on compounding principles. Small daily actions are not linear, they are exponential over time. Positive habits multiply growth, while negative habits accelerate decline. Results are delayed, which is why most people quit too early. What feels insignificant today becomes undeniable tomorrow. Practical lessons and exercises. 1. Define your current trajectory. Ask yourself honestly, based on your daily habits, where will you end up in 1 year? 2. Identify one positive 1% action. Choose a small habit that contributes to long-term growth. 3. Identify one negative 1% action. Pinpoint a small behavior that is quietly holding you back. 4. Track daily inputs, not outcomes. Focus on what you do each day, not what you achieve. 5. Commit to consistency over 14 days. Observe how repetition begins to reduce resistance and increase clarity. Transition to Chapter 3. Now you understand the math. You see how small actions compound. You see how progress builds, or declines, over time. But this leads to a deeper question. If your actions are shaping your results, what is shaping your actions? Because behavior does not come from nowhere. It is driven by something deeper. Something more powerful than motivation or discipline. Something that silently dictates what you do and what you avoid. Now entering Chapter 3, the identity behind every habit. Chapter 3, the identity behind every habit. Every habit you perform is not just an action. It is a reflection. A signal. A quiet expression of who you believe you are. This is where most people misunderstand behavior. They think habits are things you do. But habits are actually things you become. Because every repeated action reinforces an identity. Not occasionally. Not sometimes. But every single time. When you act with discipline, you are not just completing a task. You are reinforcing the identity of someone who is disciplined. When you avoid discomfort, you are not just skipping effort. You are reinforcing the identity of someone who seeks comfort. And over time, these identities solidify. They become automatic. They become unquestioned. And eventually, they become you. This is why changing habits feels so difficult. Because you are not just trying to change behavior. You are trying to change identity. And identity resists change. It wants consistency. It wants alignment. It wants to prove itself right. This creates a powerful loop. Your identity influences your actions. Your actions reinforce your identity. And the cycle repeats. This is the identity loop. If you believe you are inconsistent, you will act inconsistently. If you believe you lack discipline, you will avoid disciplined behavior. If you believe you just aren't that type of person, you will unconsciously prove it. Not because it's true, but because your brain is wired to stay consistent with what it believes. This is where the 1% shift becomes deeper than just action. Because every small habit is not just changing your results. It is rewriting your identity. But here's the key insight most people miss. Identity does not change through declarations. It changes through evidence. You cannot convince yourself you are disciplined. You must prove it. And the proof comes from repetition. Small, consistent actions that accumulate into belief. This is why big changes fail. They try to force identity through intensity. They rely on a temporary version of you to create a permanent transformation. But when that intensity fades, your identity pulls you back. Because it has more evidence, more history, more repetition. So the mind returns to what feels familiar, what feels true. This is why the 1% shift is so powerful. Because it works with identity, not against it. Instead of trying to become a completely different person overnight, you make small shifts. Tiny actions that are easy to repeat. Each repetition becomes a vote. A vote for the type of person you are becoming. One action doesn't change your identity, but a pattern does. And patterns are built through consistency. This is where the transformation begins. Not in what you achieve, but in what you repeatedly do. If you write one sentence every day, you start to become a writer. If you train for 10 minutes every day, you start to become someone who takes care of their body. If you focus deeply for short periods, you become someone who can concentrate. The actions are small, but the identity shift is massive. And once identity changes, behavior follows automatically. You no longer force yourself to act differently. You act differently because it aligns with who you are. This is the point most people never reach. Because they focus on outcomes. Weight loss, success, productivity. But outcomes are external. Identity is internal. And internal change always drives external results. If you want lasting change, you must ask a different question. Not, what do I want to achieve? But, who do I need to become? Because once you become that person, the actions follow. And when the actions follow, the results become inevitable. The 1% shift is not just about improving your habits. It is about transforming your identity. One small action at a time. Chapter 3 Summary. Habits are not just behaviors, they are expressions of identity. Every repeated action reinforces who you believe you are. Change is difficult because identity resists inconsistency. Lasting transformation happens when small actions provide evidence for a new identity. You don't achieve change first, you become the person who produces it. Practical lessons and exercises. 1. Identify your current identity. Ask yourself, what type of person do my daily actions prove I am? 2. Define your desired identity. Choose one identity you want to build, e.g., disciplined, focused, consistent. 3. Choose one supporting habit. Select a small action that reinforces this identity daily. 4. Focus on votes, not perfection. Each completed action is a vote for your new identity. 5. Track identity evidence. At the end of each day, ask, did I act like the person I want to become? Transition to Chapter 4. Now you understand something deeper. Your habits are not random. They are driven by identity. And every small action is reinforcing who you believe you are. But this raises another question. If small actions shape identity, and identity shapes behavior, then why do most people still underestimate their impact? Why do small habits feel so insignificant, even when they are quietly transforming everything? To answer that, you need to see how compounding actually plays out in real life. Not just in theory, but in reality. Now entering Chapter 4, the compound effect in real life. Chapter 4, the compound effect in real life. The idea of compounding sounds simple. Small actions, repeated consistently, producing large results over time. You understand the logic. You've seen the math. But there's a gap. A gap between understanding compounding and truly believing it. Because in real life, compounding does not feel powerful. It feels slow. It feels invisible. And often, it feels pointless. This is why most people never fully commit to it. They don't see it working. So they assume it isn't. But compounding does not reveal itself immediately. It hides in plain sight. And to understand it, you have to look at how it actually unfolds in real life. Not in theory. Not in formulas. But in patterns. Because compounding is not something you notice in a single moment. It is something you recognize in contrast. The difference between two paths, over time. Imagine two people. At the start, they are almost identical. Same background. Same opportunities. Same potential. But they make slightly different daily decisions. One improves by 1% each day. The other declines by 1% or simply stays the same. At first, there is no visible difference. Their lives look identical. Their results are similar. Nothing stands out. Weeks pass. Still nothing dramatic. Months pass. Small differences begin to emerge, but they are easy to ignore. One is slightly more focused. Slightly more disciplined. Slightly more consistent. But nothing life-changing. And this is where most people lose patience. Because they expect change to be obvious. They expect effort to immediately separate them from others. But compounding doesn't work that way. It delays the reward. It withholds visible progress. And then, it accelerates. After enough time passes, the gap becomes undeniable. The person who improved by 1% daily begins to pull ahead. Faster thinking. Stronger discipline. Better results. Opportunities begin to appear. Confidence increases. Momentum builds. Meanwhile, the other person begins to feel stuck. Not because of one bad decision. But because of repeated inaction. Repeated comfort. Repeated delay. And now the gap between them is no longer small. It is significant. And here is the critical insight. The gap was not created when it became visible. It was created in the days when nothing seemed to be happening. This is how compounding works in real life. It builds silently. Then it reveals itself suddenly. This is why people often misunderstand success. They see the visible outcome. The result. The achievement. The transformation. But they don't see the accumulation behind it. The months or years of small, consistent actions. So they assume it happened quickly. Or that it was driven by talent or luck. But in reality, it was built. One small decision at a time. Now let's make this more concrete. Think about health. Eating one unhealthy meal does not change your body. Skipping one workout does not make you unfit. But repeated daily. These actions compound. Energy decreases. Strength declines. Health deteriorates. And by the time the result is visible, it feels sudden. But it wasn't. It was accumulated. Now reverse it. One healthy meal doesn't transform your body. One workout doesn't change your fitness. But repeated consistently. They build strength. They build energy. They build resilience. And over time, the result becomes undeniable. The same principle applies to every area of life. Focus. Discipline. Productivity. Skill. Confidence. All of them are products of repeated actions. Not single events. This is where most people fail to connect the dots. They separate actions from outcomes. They treat each decision as isolated. But in reality, every decision is connected. Every action contributes to a trajectory. And that trajectory determines your future. This is why the 1% shift is not dramatic. It does not rely on big moments. It relies on small ones. Moments that feel insignificant. Moments that are easy to ignore. Moments that are easy to skip. But those moments are everything. Because they are the building blocks of compounding. And once a pattern is established, it becomes self-reinforcing. Positive habits create momentum. Momentum makes action easier. Easier action increases consistency. Consistency strengthens identity. And identity sustains the cycle. The same is true in reverse. Negative habits create resistance. Resistance reduces action. Reduced action weakens discipline. Weak discipline reinforces a negative identity. And the cycle continues. This is why compounding is not neutral. It is directional. It is either building you or breaking you. Every single day. Whether you notice it or not. Now here is the most important part. Compounding requires time. But it also requires continuity. You cannot interrupt it constantly. You cannot start and stop repeatedly. Because every time you stop, you reset the curve. You go back to the beginning. This is why consistency is not just important. It is everything. Because consistency is what allows compounding to take effect. Without it, small actions remain small. With it, they become powerful. The 1% shift is not about doing something extraordinary. It is about refusing to interrupt the process. Because the moment you stay consistent long enough, the results will come. Not because of motivation. Not because of luck. But because the math demands it. Chapter 4 Summary. Compounding in real life is slow, invisible, and delayed. Small actions do not create immediate results, but they accumulate over time. The gap between success and failure is created long before it becomes visible. Consistency allows compounding to take effect, while inconsistency resets progress. Every decision contributes to a long-term trajectory. Practical lessons and exercises. 1. Observe delayed results. Identify an area where your past actions have already compounded, positive or negative. 2. Track your daily patterns. For the next 7 days, write down your repeated behaviors without judgment. 3. Identify your trajectory. Ask, if I continue this pattern for a year, where will it lead me? 4. Eliminate one negative pattern. Remove or reduce a small habit that contributes to decline. 5. Reinforce one positive pattern. Choose one small action and commit to it daily without interruption. Transition to Chapter 5. Now you've seen how compounding works in real life. You understand that small actions build silently and reveal themselves over time. But this leads to a critical realization. If positive habits take time to show results, then negative habits do too. And that is where the real danger lies. Because what you don't see can hurt you the most. There is a form of decline that happens quietly, without warning, without urgency, without immediate consequences, until one day, it becomes impossible to ignore. Now entering Chapter 5, the danger of invisible decline. Chapter 5, the danger of invisible decline. Not all failure is loud. In fact, the most dangerous kind of failure is completely silent. It does not announce itself. It does not create immediate consequences. And it does not force you to react. It simply progresses. Quietly. Gradually. Almost imperceptibly. This is what we call invisible decline. And it is far more destructive than sudden failure. Because sudden failure gets your attention. It forces awareness. It demands change. Invisible decline does the opposite. It allows you to stay comfortable. It allows you to delay action. It allows you to believe that everything is fine, even when it isn't. This is how people lose years of their lives. Not through one catastrophic mistake, but through a series of small, seemingly harmless decisions. Decisions that feel justified in the moment. I'll do it tomorrow. This isn't a big deal. I deserve a break. Individually, these choices mean nothing. But repeated daily, they become a pattern. And patterns create trajectories. This is the core danger. Because invisible decline does not feel like decline. It feels like normal life. You don't notice the drop in discipline. You don't notice the decrease in focus. You don't notice the slow erosion of standards. Everything feels manageable. Until it isn't. And by the time it becomes visible, it feels overwhelming. This is why people often describe negative outcomes as sudden. Sudden weight gain. Sudden loss of motivation. Sudden lack of direction. But nothing about it was sudden. It was gradual. It was compounded. It was invisible until it wasn't. This is the exact opposite of how people expect failure to work. They imagine a clear warning sign. A moment where everything becomes obvious. A point where they can say, "Now I need to change." But invisible decline removes that moment. There is no clear signal. No dramatic shift. Just a slow drift away from where you want to be. And the longer it continues, the harder it becomes to reverse. Because decline affects more than results. It affects identity. Every time you choose comfort over effort, you reinforce a version of yourself that avoids challenges. Every time you delay action, you strengthen the habit of procrastination. Every time you lower your standards, you normalize mediocrity. And over time, this becomes your baseline. This is where people feel stuck. Not because they lack potential, but because their current identity has been shaped by repeated decline. And changing that identity feels difficult, because it requires going against what has become familiar. This is why awareness is critical. Because you cannot change what you do not see. And invisible decline is, by definition, difficult to see. So you have to look for signals. Not dramatic ones, but subtle ones. A decrease in energy. A lack of focus. A growing resistance to effort. A tendency to avoid what matters. These are not random. They are indicators. Indicators that small negative actions are accumulating. That your trajectory is shifting. That your 1% is moving in the wrong direction. And here is the truth most people avoid. Decline is easier than growth. It requires less effort. Less discipline. Less awareness. That is why it happens so easily. That is why it feels natural. But natural does not mean neutral. It means default. And the default direction, without intervention, is decline. This is why the 1% shift must be intentional. Because if you are not actively improving, you are passively declining. There is no stable position. No neutral state. You are always moving. The question is, in which direction? Now here is the good news. Invisible decline works both ways. Just as negative actions accumulate quietly, positive actions do too. The difference is awareness. If you can detect decline early, you can interrupt it. You can make small corrections. You can shift direction before the consequences become severe. This is the power of the 1% shift. It allows you to act before it's too late. Not through drastic change, but through small adjustments. Daily decisions that move you back toward growth. Because the goal is not perfection. It is direction. A slight shift, repeated consistently, is enough. Enough to stop the decline. Enough to rebuild momentum. Enough to change your trajectory. And over time, that small shift becomes everything. Chapter 5 Summary. Invisible decline is slow, silent, and difficult to detect. Negative habits feel harmless individually but compound over time. There is no neutral state. Without intentional improvement, decline becomes the default. Awareness is the key to identifying and interrupting negative patterns early. Small corrections can prevent long-term consequences. Practical lessons and exercises. 1. Identify subtle warning signs. Notice areas where your energy, focus, or discipline has decreased. 2. Track avoidance patterns. Write down tasks you consistently delay or avoid. 3. Define your default direction. Ask, if I continue like this, am I improving or declining? 4. Interrupt one negative cycle. Choose one small behavior to correct immediately. 5. Implement a daily check-in. At the end of each day, ask, did my actions move me forward or backward? Transition to Chapter 6. Now you see the danger. Decline does not announce itself. It builds quietly, beneath your awareness. And if left unchecked, it shapes your identity, your habits, and your future. But this leads to a critical question. If decline is easy, and growth requires effort, then how do you stay consistent? How do you keep showing up? Even when motivation disappears. Because motivation will disappear. And when it does, what remains determines everything. Now entering Chapter 6, why consistency beats intensity every time. Chapter 6: Why Consistency Beats Intensity Every Time. Motivation is unreliable. It feels powerful at the moment. It creates urgency. It makes you believe that change is finally happening. But it does not last. And anything that does not last cannot transform your life. This is the trap most people fall into. They wait to feel motivated before they act. They rely on emotional energy to drive behavior. They assume that if they feel strong enough, they will stay consistent. But motivation is not designed for consistency. It is designed for short bursts. It spikes. It fades. And it leaves you exactly where you started. This is why intensity is deceptive. Because in the beginning, it looks like progress. You do more. You push harder. You take massive action. And for a short time, it feels effective. But intensity has a hidden flaw. It is difficult to sustain. It demands too much energy, too much focus, too much discipline, all at once. And eventually, something breaks. You get tired. You lose focus. You miss a day. And that one missed day becomes 2. Then 3. And slowly, the system collapses. Not because you failed, but because the approach was unsustainable. This is why consistency is superior. Not because it is exciting, but because it is repeatable. Consistency does not rely on how you feel. It relies on structure, on simplicity, on reducing friction. It removes the emotional dependency from action. Instead of asking, "Do I feel like doing this today?" you ask, "Is this what I do?" This is a fundamental shift, because it changes behavior from optional to automatic. Consistency is built on a simple principle. Lower the barrier to action. Make the habit so small, so manageable, that skipping it feels harder than doing it. Because the goal is not to perform at your best. The goal is to show up. Every day. Without interruption. This is where most people get it wrong. They focus on performance. They want every action to be meaningful. Every session is productive. Every effort is intense. But performance fluctuates. Some days you will feel strong. Some days you won't. Consistency does not care. It only cares that you continue. Because continuation is what allows compounding to work. Missing once is not the problem. Stopping is. Breaking the pattern is what resets progress. This is why consistency must be protected. Not perfectly, but intentionally. If you cannot do the full version of a habit, you do a reduced version. If you cannot train for an hour, you train for 10 minutes. If you cannot focus deeply, you do a small, focused task. Because something is always better than nothing. And more importantly, something maintains the identity. It reinforces the pattern. It keeps the system alive. This is what creates long-term momentum. Now consider the alternative. Intensity without consistency. You work hard for a few days. Then you stop. You push yourself. Then you burn out. You repeat this cycle again and again. And each time, you return to the beginning. This creates frustration. Because you feel like you're trying, but not progressing. And the reason is simple. Compounding requires continuity. Without continuity, effort is wasted. This is why consistency, even at a low level, will always outperform intensity that is inconsistent. Because consistency accumulates. Intensity resets. Now here is where consistency becomes powerful. When repetition removes resistance. At first, every action feels difficult. It requires effort. It requires focus. But over time, something changes. The action becomes familiar. It becomes easier. It requires less energy. And eventually, it becomes automatic. This is the point where habits begin to work for you, instead of you working for them. This is when discipline transforms into identity. You no longer struggle to act. You act because it's who you are. And once you reach this point, consistency is no longer a challenge. It becomes your default. This is why the 1% shift prioritizes repetition over intensity. Because repetition creates identity. And identity sustains behavior. If you want lasting change, you must remove your dependence on motivation. You must stop chasing intensity. And you must build a system that works, even on your worst days. Because your worst days matter more than your best ones. Anyone can perform when they feel motivated. But real transformation happens when you act without it. That is consistency. And that is where real change begins. Chapter 6 Summary. Motivation is temporary and unreliable. Intensity creates short-term progress but is difficult to sustain. Consistency works because it is repeatable and independent of emotion. Lowering the barrier to action makes habits easier to maintain. Small, consistent actions outperform inconsistent bursts of effort. Practical lessons and exercises. 1. Identify where you rely on motivation. Notice habits you only perform when you feel like it. 2. Reduce your habit size. Make one key habit so small that it becomes impossible to skip. 3. Create a non-negotiable rule. Decide, no matter what, I will do this daily. 4. Use the minimum version strategy. Define the smallest version of your habit for low-energy days. 5. Track streaks, not performance. Focus on how many days in a row you show up, not how well you perform. Transition to Chapter 7. Now you understand why consistency is the foundation. It keeps the system running. It allows compounding to take effect. But consistency does not exist in isolation. Because your behavior is not shaped by willpower alone. It is influenced by something around you. Something you interact with every day, often without noticing. Your environment. The space you live in. The people around you. The cues you are exposed to. All of these are quietly shaping your actions. Guiding your habits. Reinforcing your patterns. And if you ignore this, you will always struggle to stay consistent. Now entering Chapter 7, the environment that shapes your behavior. Chapter 7, the environment that shapes your behavior. You believe you are in control of your actions. That your decisions come from willpower. From discipline. From conscious choice. But much of your behavior is not decided at the moment. It is decided before the moment even arrives. It is shaped by your environment. The spaces you occupy. The objects you see. The people you interact with. The systems surrounding your daily life. All of these are constantly influencing your behavior. Quietly. Subtly. Powerfully. This is one of the most overlooked aspects of the 1% shift. Because people focus on changing themselves, while ignoring the environment that is shaping them. And this creates friction. You try to build better habits. In an environment designed for worse ones. You try to stay focused. In a space filled with distractions. You try to stay disciplined. While surrounded by cues that trigger the opposite behavior. And then you blame yourself when it doesn't work. But the issue is not always you. It is the system around you. Because behavior is often a response to cues. You don't randomly check your phone. You see it. You hear it. You feel the urge. And you respond. You don't randomly snack. You see food. It's available. It's easy. And you act. These are not conscious decisions. They are automatic responses to your environment. This is why willpower is limited. Because it requires constant resistance. And constant resistance leads to fatigue. But when you change your environment, you reduce the need for resistance. You remove the trigger. You remove the friction. And behavior begins to change naturally. This is the principle of environmental design. Instead of forcing better decisions, you make better decisions easier. And worse decisions are harder. This is where the 1% shift becomes practical. Because small environmental changes can create massive behavioral differences. Let's make this clear. If your phone is always within reach, you will use it more. If unhealthy food is visible, you will eat it more. If distractions are present, your focus will decrease. Not because you lack discipline, but because the environment is influencing your behavior. Now reverse it. If your phone is out of sight, you will use it less. If healthy options are easily available, you will choose them more often. If your workspace is clean and structured, your focus improves. These are small shifts, but they change your default behavior. And default behavior is what matters. Because most actions are not intentional. They are automatic. This is why the most effective way to change your habits is not to fight yourself, but to redesign your environment. Now consider another layer. People. The individuals you spend time with have a direct impact on your behavior. Not through pressure, but through normalization. You adapt to what is around you. If you are surrounded by disciplined people, discipline becomes normal. If you are surrounded by distraction, distraction becomes normal. You don't question it. You absorb it. This is why the environment is not just physical. It is social. It is digital. It is psychological. Everything you consume, everything you see, everything you interact with, is shaping your patterns. This is where most people lose control. Not because they are weak, but because they are unaware. They don't realize how much influence their environment has. So they try to rely on willpower. And willpower eventually fails. But awareness changes everything. Because once you see the influence, you can adjust it. You can design your environment intentionally. You can remove friction from positive habits. You can add friction to negative ones. You can create systems that support your behavior, instead of working against it. This is the shift. From reacting to your environment, to control it. And once you control it, consistency becomes easier. Not because you changed your motivation, but because you changed your conditions. This is how the 1% shift becomes sustainable. Not through effort alone, but through design. Small adjustments in your environment that guides your behavior automatically. Because the goal is not to rely on discipline forever. The goal is to make the right actions feel natural. And when your environment supports you, they will. Chapter 7 Summary. Your behavior is heavily influenced by your environment. Most actions are responses to cues, not conscious decisions. Willpower is limited, but environment design reduces the need for it. Small environmental changes can significantly impact habits. Both physical and social environments shape your behavior and identity. Practical lessons and exercises. 1. Identify your triggers. Notice what cues lead to your most common habits. 2. Remove negative cues. Eliminate or reduce exposure to distractions and harmful patterns. 3. Add positive cues. Make beneficial habits visible, easy, and accessible. 4. Redesign your space. Adjust your environment to support focus, discipline, and consistency. 5. Evaluate your social environment. Ask, are the people around me reinforcing the person I want to become? Transition to Chapter 8. Now you understand something critical. Your behavior is not just a product of willpower. It is shaped by your environment. And by changing your environment, you make consistency easier. But even with the right environment, there is still a challenge. Because negative patterns don't disappear automatically. They have been built over time, reinforced through repetition. And breaking them requires more than awareness. It requires interruption, a deliberate shift, a decision to break the cycle, and replace it with something better. Now entering Chapter 8, Breaking the Negative 1% Cycle. Chapter 8, Breaking the Negative 1% Cycle. By now, you understand how negative patterns are built. Not through major mistakes, but through small, repeated actions. Quiet decisions. Subtle compromises. Moments of avoidance that feel insignificant, but accumulate. Over time, these patterns become automatic. They no longer feel like choices. They feel like habits. And eventually, they feel like who you are. This is the negative 1% cycle. A loop of behavior that reinforces itself. You act in a certain way. That action strengthens a pattern. That pattern shapes your identity. And that identity drives the next action. And the cycle continues. This is why breaking negative habits feels difficult. Because you are not just changing behavior. You are disrupting a system. A system that has been built through repetition. A system that feels familiar. And familiarity creates comfort. Even when it leads to results you don't want. This is the paradox. You want change. But you are pulled toward what is known. This is why awareness alone is not enough. You can recognize the pattern. You can understand it. But unless you interrupt it, it will continue. Because systems do not stop on their own. They must be disrupted. This is where the 1% shift becomes intentional. Because breaking a negative cycle does not require a complete transformation. It requires a small interruption. A single decision that breaks the pattern. At the right moment. Because every habit follows a sequence. A trigger. An action. A reward. The trigger creates the urge. The action fulfills it. The reward reinforces it. If you want to break the cycle, you don't fight the entire system. You target one point. The interruption point. The moment between trigger and action. This is where control exists. Not before the urge. Not after the habit. But in the space between. That brief moment. Where you can choose differently. This moment is small. But it is powerful. Because one different decision breaks the automatic loop. Now here is the key. The interruption must be simple. If it requires too much effort, you will default to the old pattern. So instead of trying to eliminate the habit completely, you replace it. You redirect the action. For example, if you reach for your phone automatically, you pause and take one breath. If you avoid a task, you commit to working on it for 1 minute. If you default to distraction, you shift to a smaller, focused action. These are not dramatic changes. They are small disruptions. But they break the loop. And once the loop is broken, you create space for a new pattern. This is where consistency returns. Because every interruption is a new vote. A vote for a different identity. A vote for a different direction. And repeated over time. These votes begin to outweigh the old pattern. This is how transformation happens. Not through force, but through replacement. Now here is where most people fail. They expect immediate change. They interrupt the pattern once. And expect it to disappear. But patterns do not vanish instantly. They weaken gradually. Because they were built gradually. So the goal is not perfection. It is repetition. Interrupt. Replace. Repeat. Again and again. Until the new pattern becomes stronger than the old one. This is the turning point. The moment when the negative cycle loses control. And the positive cycle begins to take over. Now consider the identity shift. At first, you are someone trying to break a habit. But over time, you become someone who responds differently. Someone who pauses instead of reacting. Someone who acts with awareness instead of impulse. And this identity begins to stabilize. Because it is supported by evidence. Repeated actions that confirm it. This is how the 1% shift reverses direction. From decline to grow. Not instantly, but inevitably. Because once you consistently interrupt the negative cycle, you remove its power. And once that power is removed, you are no longer controlled by it. You become the one making the decisions. Consciously. Intentionally. Consistently. Chapter 8 Summary. Negative habits are self-reinforcing cycles built through repetition. Awareness alone is not enough, patterns must be interrupted. Every habit has a trigger, action, and reward sequence. Change happens by interrupting and replacing the action. Small, consistent disruptions weaken old patterns and build new ones. Practical lessons and exercises. 1. Identify one negative loop. Define the trigger, action, and reward of a habit you want to change. 2. Find the interruption point. Notice the moment between urge and action. 3. Create a replacement action. Choose a simple behavior to perform instead of the old habit. 4. Use the pause technique. Chapter 9: Designing Your Positive 1% System. Breaking negative cycles creates space. But empty space does not automatically lead to progress. If you remove a pattern without replacing it, your mind will eventually fill the gap with something familiar. This is why change often fails after initial success. People stop a bad habit, but do not build a new structure to replace it. So the system collapses back into old behaviors. Not because they lack willpower, but because they lack design. The 1% shift is not only about stopping decline. It is about building a structure that makes growth unavoidable. A system where positive actions are not dependent on motivation, but embedded into your daily environment and identity. This is where transformation becomes stable. Because systems outperform effort. Every time. A system is simply a set of conditions that make the desired behavior more likely. It removes decision fatigue. It removes emotional dependency. It removes randomness. Instead of asking, "Will I do this today?" the system makes the answer automatic. Yes. Or at least, highly likely. Now, to design a positive 1% system, you do not start with complexity. You start with reduction. Because most people fail not from lack of effort, but from overload. Too many goals. Too many changes. Too many expectations. This creates friction. And friction kills consistency. So the first principle is simple. Reduce everything to the smallest repeatable action. Not the ideal version. The sustainable version. If the habit is too large, it becomes fragile. If it is small enough, it becomes durable. This is the foundation of compounding. Because compounding requires repetition. And repetition requires simplicity. Now the second principle. Anchor your habits to existing routines. This is called habit stacking. You do not create new systems in isolation. You attach them to what already exists. For example, after waking up, you perform one small intentional action. After eating, you reset your focus for 1 minute. After sitting down, you begin a short task immediately. These anchors remove decision-making. They turn behavior into sequence. And sequences are easier to follow than isolated choices. The third principle is environmental reinforcement. You do not rely on memory. You rely on visibility. You make the right action obvious. You prepare your environment in advance. You reduce friction for positive behavior. And you increase friction for negative behavior. This creates bias in your system. A bias toward growth. The fourth principle is identity alignment. Every system must reinforce who you are becoming. Not just what you are doing. Because if your actions conflict with your identity, they will eventually collapse. But if your actions support your identity, they become self-sustaining. This is where repetition becomes powerful. Because each action is not just progress. It is proof. Proof that you are the type of person who follows through. Now consider what happens when all of this is combined. Small actions. Attached to existing routines. Supported by environment design. Reinforcing identity. You no longer rely on motivation. You rely on structure. And structure does what motivation cannot. It persists. Even on difficult days. Even when energy is low. Even when focus is weak. This is the true advantage of a system. It removes variability. And replaces it with consistency. Now here is the most important insight. Your system does not need to be perfect. It only needs to be repeatable. Because repetition is what creates compounding. Not intensity. Not perfection. Not inspiration. Repetition. Even a small action, repeated daily, becomes powerful over time. And once the system is in place, your role changes. You are no longer forcing behavior. You are maintaining structure. And structure carries you forward. This is the point where life begins to shift. Not because everything becomes easier, but because everything becomes aligned. Your environment supports you. Your habits support you. Your identity supports you. And when alignment is strong, resistance weakens. This is how the 1% shift becomes permanent. Not through bursts of effort, but through systems that run continuously. Chapter 9 Summary. A positive system replaces randomness with structure. Small, repeatable actions are more effective than large, unsustainable ones. Habit stacking, environment design, and identity alignment strengthen consistency. Systems remove the need for motivation and reduce decision fatigue. Repetition, not intensity, creates long-term transformation. Practical lessons and exercises. 1. Define one core 1% habit. Choose a single small action you can realistically repeat daily. 2. Attach it to an anchor habit. Link it to something you already do every day. 3. Reduce friction. Prepare your environment so the habit is easy to start. 4. Define identity alignment. Write the identity this habit supports. 5. Test for 7 days. Focus only on repetition, not performance or outcomes. Transition to Chapter 10. Now you have built the system. You understand how small actions become structured, how repetition becomes automatic, and how identity begins to stabilize. But there is still one more layer. Because systems take time. And during that time, most people lose patience. They expect immediate results. Immediate validation. Immediate proof that things are working. But compounding does not work on human impatience. It works on time. And understanding time is what separates those who quit early from those who transform completely. Now entering Chapter 10, The Power of Time and Patience. Chapter 10, The Power of Time and Patience. Time is the most misunderstood element of change. People respect effort. They respect intelligence. They respect strategy. But they underestimate time. And because of that, they underestimate progress. Most failures are not caused by lack of ability. They are caused by impatience. Because the mind is wired to seek immediate feedback. It wants proof now. Results now. Validation now. But the systems that shape your future do not operate on immediate feedback. They operate on delay. This delay is where most people lose alignment with the process. You take action, but see no result. You build habits, but feel no change. You stay consistent, but experience no reward. And the mind begins to question the process. Is this working? Should I stop? Am I wasting my time? This is the critical moment. Because nothing has gone wrong externally. But internally, doubt begins to grow. And doubt is what interrupts compounding. Not failure. Doubt. This is why patience is not passive. It is not waiting. It is a continuation without visible reward. It is trusting the process when there is no evidence yet. This is one of the hardest forms of discipline. Because there is no reinforcement. No immediate payoff. Only repetition. And repetition without reward feels uncomfortable. But this discomfort is necessary. It is the gap between action and outcome. The space where compounding is building silently. Now consider how growth actually works. It does not increase in a straight line. It moves slowly at first. Almost flat. No visible progress. Then suddenly, it rises. This is the nature of exponential growth. And it is deceptive. Because the early phase feels like nothing is happening. But in reality, everything is happening. The foundation is forming. The structure is strengthening. The system is stabilizing. But it is not visible yet. This is where patience becomes essential. Because patience allows the system to complete its hidden work. Without interruption. Without reset. Without premature abandonment. Now think about how most people behave. They start strong. They apply effort. They expect quick change. But when results do not appear, they stop. And every time they stop, they reset progress. They return to zero. Not physically, but mathematically. Because compounding requires continuity. Without it, growth never reaches its tipping point. This is why time is not just a factor. It is the multiplier. Time amplifies everything. Positive actions become stronger. Negative actions become more destructive. But only if they are consistent. This is the key distinction. Time does not reward intention. It rewards repetition. Now consider what happens when you combine time with consistency. At first, nothing feels different. Then small changes appear. Slight improvements in focus. Slight increases in discipline. Slight shifts in identity. These changes feel subtle, almost unnoticeable, but they are structural, because they indicate that the system is working. And once the system stabilizes, momentum begins. Momentum reduces resistance. Reduced resistance increases consistency. And increased consistency strengthens identity. This is the compounding loop. But none of it works without patience. Because patience is what allows the loop to continue uninterrupted. Now here is the paradox. The longer you stay patient, the faster results appear. Not because time speeds up, but because compounding accelerates. Early stages are slow. Later stages are fast. This is why people who quit early never see the payoff. They exit before acceleration begins. They confuse delay with failure. But delay is not failure. It is development. Invisible development. Now bring this back to your daily life. Every small action you take today is not meant to produce immediate change. It is meant to contribute to a future state. A version of you that only emerges through accumulation. Through repetition. Through time. And if you interrupt that process, you reset it. But if you allow it to continue, it compounds. This is the quiet truth behind transformation. Time is always working. The only question is whether it is working for you or against you. And that depends entirely on your consistency. So patience is not waiting. It is participation. It continues to act when results are not visible. It is trusting that the system is doing its work, even when you cannot see it. Because eventually, you will. Chapter 10 Summary. Time amplifies all actions, but only when consistency is maintained. Most people fail due to impatience, not lack of ability. Growth appears slow at first, then accelerates suddenly. Patience is an active continuation without visible reward. Interrupting the process resets compounding progress. Practical lessons and exercises. 1. Track invisible progress. Write down small improvements that are not immediately visible. 2. Commit to long-term consistency. Choose one habit and commit without evaluating results for 14 to 30 days. 3. Identify impatience triggers. Notice when you feel tempted to quit due to lack of results. 4. Reframe waiting. Replace "nothing is happening" with "progress is building invisibly." 5. Focus on input, not output. Measure actions taken, not results received. Transition to Chapter 11. Now you understand the role of time. You see how patience allows compounding to unfold. But this leads to a final shift. Because understanding systems is not enough. Understanding time is not enough. At some point, knowledge must become identity. You must stop thinking about change as something you do, and start living as the person who no longer needs to be convinced. Because the final stage of the 1% shift is not behavior. It is becoming. Now entering Chapter 11, becoming the person who sustains growth. Chapter 11, becoming the person who sustains growth. At this stage, something important should already be clear. Change is not a single event. It is not a breakthrough moment. It is not a surge of motivation. Change is a continuation of identity. A slow, repeated confirmation of who you are becoming. But there is a point where effort alone is no longer enough. Where systems are in place. Where habits are established. Where awareness is present. Yet something still determines whether growth continues or collapses. That something is identity stability. Because many people can start to change. Few can sustain it. Starting requires inspiration. Sustaining requires identity. This is where the 1% shift reaches its most advanced stage. Not building new habits. Not breaking old ones. But becoming someone for whom the correct behavior is no longer a decision. It is the default. This is a subtle but powerful transition. At first, you act with intention. You remind yourself. You push yourself. You rely on structure. But over time, something changes. The actions that once required effort begin to require less resistance. Then even less. Until eventually, they feel natural. This is the point where behavior and identity align. And when that alignment happens, discipline is no longer something you use. It is something you embody. Now here is the deeper truth. Most people think discipline is about control. But long-term discipline is about alignment. If your identity and your actions are misaligned, every habit feels like resistance. But if they are aligned, action feels like expression. Not forcing yourself forward, but acting in accordance with who you are. This is where sustainability emerges. Because you no longer rely on emotional states. You rely on self-consistency. You behave in ways that match your internal definition of yourself. And the stronger that definition becomes, the more automatic your behavior becomes. This is why identity is the foundation of long-term growth. Not motivation. Not goals. Not even systems. Because systems still require maintenance. But identity sustains systems. Now consider what happens when identity fully stabilizes. You stop negotiating with yourself. You stop debating actions. You stop asking whether you should do what you already know aligns with you. There is no internal conflict. Only execution. This is the stage most people never reach. Because they remain stuck in a cycle of starting and stopping. Starting creates temporary identity. Stopping dissolves it. And without continuity, identity never stabilizes. But when continuity is maintained long enough, something shifts. You begin to trust yourself. Not emotionally, but behaviorally. You have evidence. Evidence that you follow through. Evidence that you return to discipline. Evidence that you do not abandon yourself easily. And that evidence becomes identity. Now the 1% shift takes on its final form. You are no longer trying to improve your habits. You are maintaining the identity that produces those habits. Every small action becomes reinforcement. Every repetition becomes confirmation. Every consistent day becomes structural reinforcement of who you are. And this is where growth becomes sustainable. Because you are no longer fighting yourself. You are expressing yourself. And expression requires far less effort than resistance. Now consider the contrast. A person who depends on motivation must constantly restart. A person who depends on systems must maintain structure. But a person whose identity is aligned simply continues. Not because it is easy, but because it is consistent with who they are. This is the final shift. From doing to become. From effort to identity. From change to permanence. And once you reach this stage, you no longer ask whether you will continue. Because continuation is already assumed. It is who you are. Chapter 11 Summary. Sustainable growth is driven by identity, not motivation or systems alone. When identity and behavior align, action becomes natural and effortless. Consistency builds self-trust, which reinforces identity stability. At this stage, discipline is no longer forced, it is embodied. Long-term transformation is the result of becoming, not just doing. Practical lessons and exercises. 1. Define your stabilized identity. Write a clear statement of who you are becoming based on your actions. 2. Identify alignment gaps. Notice where your actions still conflict with your desired identity. 3. Reinforce identity evidence. Track daily proof that supports your new identity. 4. Remove identity contradictions. Reduce behaviors that conflict with the person you are becoming. 5. Act without negotiation. Practice immediate execution of one key habit without internal debate. Transition to Chapter 12. Now you have reached a critical threshold. You understand habits. You understand systems. You understand time. You understand identity. But there is one final stage. Because even identity has a limit if it is not tested. Eventually, every system faces pressure. Every habit faces resistance. Every identity faces disruption. And in that moment, only one thing determines whether you continue forward or fall back. The point of no return. Now entering Chapter 12, the point of no return. Chapter 12, The Point of No Return. There is a moment in every transformation that is rarely noticed while it is happening. It is not loud. It is not emotional. It does not arrive with certainty or clarity. It feels ordinary. Just another day. Just another decision. Just another repetition of something familiar. But beneath that surface, something irreversible begins to form. This is the point of no return. Not because everything changes instantly, but because your direction begins to stabilize into something increasingly difficult to reverse. At this stage, the 1% shift is no longer just influence. It becomes a trajectory. And trajectory is far more powerful than isolated behavior. Behavior can fluctuate. But the trajectory accumulates. It carries the weight of everything you have repeated. At first, change feels fragile. You must force new habits. You must resist old patterns. You must stay conscious of every decision. But if you persist long enough, something shifts. The resistance weakens. The actions stabilize. The identity begins to solidify. And then a quiet realization appears. Going back feels harder than going forward. This is the true threshold. Not because reversal is impossible, but because it no longer feels natural. You have built too much evidence in one direction. Too many repetitions. Too many confirmations. Too much momentum. The old version of you still exists, but it no longer leads to your behavior. It becomes background noise. Meanwhile, the new version becomes default. This is the invisible transition most people miss. Because it does not feel dramatic. It feels like normal life. But normal has changed. Now here is the key insight. The point of no return is not a single moment. It is a gradual accumulation of consistency until reversal becomes unlikely. You only recognize it in hindsight. You look back and realize, I don't think the same way anymore. I don't react like I used to. I don't need to force what was once difficult. And that realization confirms the shift has already happened. This is why the 1% shift is so powerful. Because it does not depend on intensity. It depends on sustained direction. And sustained direction eventually becomes identity. Once identity stabilizes, behavior follows automatically. At that stage, discipline is no longer about effort. It becomes maintenance. You are no longer fighting yourself. You are maintaining alignment. And that is where real transformation settles. Chapter summary. The point of no return is the stage where repeated behavior locks in a stable trajectory. Change feels fragile at first but becomes self-sustaining through repetition. Identity forms gradually through accumulated actions, not single decisions. Once identity stabilizes, returning to old behavior feels unnatural. Transformation becomes a state of maintenance rather than effort. Practical lessons and exercises. 1. Identify your trajectory. Ask, based on my current habits, where am I already heading? 2. Look for stabilization signs. Notice behaviors that now feel automatic instead of forced. 3. Reinforce direction. Strengthen habits that align with the identity you are building. 4. Eliminate reversal triggers. Identify what pulls you back toward old patterns and reduce exposure. 5. Commit to continuation. Focus less on starting new habits and more on not breaking existing ones. Ending transition. Now you have seen the full arc of the 1% shift. From small actions, to compounding, to identity, to irreversible direction. At this point, everything is already in motion. The only remaining question is not whether change is possible. It is whether you will continue the pattern you have already started, or intentionally redirect it through new repetition. Because either way, the system does not stop. It only compounds. And it will continue shaping your future. 1% shift at a time. Conclusion. Your future is already being written. Everything in this audiobook leads to a single realization. Your future is not something that suddenly happens to you. It is something that is being constructed right now. Not in dramatic moments. Not in life-changing decisions. But in the quiet repetition of small actions. The 1% shift is not a theory. It is the ongoing accumulation of your daily behavior. Every choice you make is a contribution. Either toward growth or toward decline. There is no neutral ground. Even inaction is a form of direction. And over time, direction becomes destiny. What you now understand is simple, but not easy. Small habits are not small. They are signals. They are votes. They are instructions to your future self. Each repetition reinforces identity. Each identity shapes behavior. Each behavior defines outcomes. And the cycle continues. Most people never see this clearly. They wait for motivation. They rely on intensity. They chase sudden transformation. But transformation rarely arrives suddenly. It accumulates silently until it becomes undeniable. And by the time it becomes visible, it has already been in motion for a long time. This is why awareness is powerful. Because once you see the system, you cannot unknow it. You begin to notice patterns. You recognize repetition. You become aware of how small decisions are shaping large outcomes. And that awareness creates responsibility. Not pressure. Not guilt. But responsibility for direction. Because once you understand the 1% shift, you are no longer a passive participant in your life. You are an active designer of it. And that means every day becomes meaningful. Not because every day is dramatic, but because every day contributes. So the question is no longer, what will change my life? The real question is, what am I repeating that is creating my life? And from that question, everything becomes clear. Change is not found in intensity. It is found in consistency. Not in rare moments of effort, but in ordinary moments repeated over time. And the future you will eventually live in is already being shaped by the habits you repeat today. So the shift is simple, but powerful. Improve by 1% or decline by 1%. Repeat it long enough, and it becomes your life. Final message. If this audiobook helped you understand the power of small actions, subscribe to MindLab audiobooks for more deep, high-impact content designed to reprogram thinking, reshape habits, and build long-term discipline. Because the real work doesn't happen when you finish listening. It happens when you begin applying what you now know. Final words. You have now reached the end of the 1% shift. But in reality, this is not an ending. It is a point of awareness. Because once you understand how small actions compound, how identity is formed through repetition, and how trajectories silently shape your future, you cannot return to the way you used to see your life. Nothing about your days is random. Nothing about your habits is neutral. And nothing about your future is sudden. It is all being built through the smallest decisions you repeat without thinking. The truth is simple. You are always shifting by 1%. Either toward growth or toward decline. And the direction is already in motion. The only question is whether you will now take responsibility for it. If this audiobook resonated with you, you are not new to this journey. You have already explored deeper layers of awareness through previous MindLab audiobooks. The Comfort Zone Trap. Why safety is slowly destroying your potential. The Awakening Mind. Why most people are living on autopilot and don't know it. The Fear Barrier. Why you're stuck, and how fear is controlling your life. The life you're not living. What happens when you never take the risk? Reprogram your limits. Break free from the invisible rules holding you back. The Habit Code. How your daily actions are quietly controlling your entire life. The Identity Loop. Why you can't change your habits, even when you try. The Repetition Trap. How your brain locks you into the same life every day. And the next chapter in this journey is already in motion. The Automatic Life. How habits turn you into someone you never chose to be. If you want to continue this path of awareness and transformation, make sure you stay connected with the MindLab audiobook series. Like this video. Comment on your key insight. Share it with at least 7 people who need to hear it. And subscribe to MindLab audiobooks so you do not miss what comes next. Because once you see the system behind your life, you cannot unsee it. And what you choose to do with that awareness is where everything begins.